Welcome home, Rep Pack. Marcus here, and welcome to Comfort Cartoons, the show where I collect absolutely everything from the late 90s, 2000s, all the way to the modern day. And I'm also trying to create the world's biggest Spongebob and Nickelodeon collection. But not just that, the founder and CEO of this show has waited in line for a pretty patty, actually. I actually don't see anything wrong with her tongue. But I hope you beautiful people are having an amazing day. And if you guys aren't, you know the drill. Spongebob flashback camera flip.
Here's when I moved in right next door. Oh, and here's when I got Employee of the Month instead of you again.
Today is going to be an interesting video, guys. Today is going to be a sit-down video where we talk and we get to learn some awesome stuff about our favorite sea sponge. For those of you guys that are new here, or if you haven't been here for that long, I've been literally, almost literally, a lifelong SpongeBob fan. I've been watching the series since I was 4 or 5 years old, all the way up until now, over 20 years. Like I said, we're going to be breaking down the start of SpongeBob all the way till today. There's going to be some stuff many of you guys probably have heard about as SpongeBob fans, but I'm going to be glazing over some of that stuff just to give context to other people. But I hope that I can show you some stuff from the background to where at least by the end of this video you've learned one, two, at least a couple new things about SpongeBob. And most of this information is going to be coming today from the SpongeBob Exposed book, the SpongeBob SquarePants Experience, the SpongeBob DocuPants documentary, the Story of SpongeBob documentary, and also the SpongeBob Wiki. So we've dug deep, and I've been looking through all these different sources for years, and some of them as of most recently, this book in particular, which really sparked my inspiration to make this video. So we're gonna start with the foundation of SpongeBob and get to learn more about his design. And as we get to the creation of all the characters, we're gonna check out all the designs and see how they compare from their inception to season 1 to modern day, and kind of see what changed, how these characters evolved and morphed over the years. I think it's gonna be a lot of fun. It's gonna be really funny to see some of the early decisions, some of the early looks of the characters, and also interesting, but also kind of funny to see how much they've changed, as with many cartoon characters throughout time. So without any further ado, let's get into it. So of course, before we start getting into the designs of SpongeBob, I want to take a look at the earliest forms of SpongeBob. So for those of you guys who don't know, the character was made by the iconic legend Stephen Hillenburg. And Stephen Hillenburg comes from my home state here in California and taught different kids about marine biology at the Orange County Marine Institute that you can see on screen. But believe it or not, in this building right here, this is where we kind of get our first peek at our first SpongeBob-esque character. And like I said, we're gonna get through this a little bit quick so we can get into those other designs. And I'm also gonna add a note about something he did at this institute that makes its airing even before you see SpongeBob on screen in the first episode, Help Wanted, which I'll talk about in a second. But while he was at the Marine Institute, Stephen Hillenburg had a love for drawing and doing sketches since his childhood. And his boss at the institute actually saw some of these drawings and asked Stephen if he could essentially make a comic book for the institute to hand out to kids so they could learn a little bit about some of the creatures under the ocean, in specific the tide pools. And this comic was called the Intertidal Zone. And here is the cover for the Intertidal Zone. As of right now, this comic has not been fully released. I love to believe, as a SpongeBob fan through and through, and as somebody who loves this stuff just for value and happiness it's brought me in my life, I like to believe that that comic book is in its full still exists somewhere in Nickelodeon's deepest archives, or maybe within the Hillenburg family, and it's just kind of sitting there, being preserved. As a collector, I just hope that it got preserved, but nonetheless, really all we have is some crop shots of it and also this cover. And in this cover, you'll see some characters on there. You got a character named Rocky the Shrimp, which doesn't really, you do have this shrimp that kind of appeared in one episode, I think, with a soda, but besides him, there's not really a lot of shrimp characters. But you do get to see a very early version, almost the seed that is the plant that becomes Gary the Snail. You can see him on the bottom of the feet of the starfish character. And we can also see the origin creator of the "alright, I'm about to head out" meme. We have the TV and also a very embodiment of SpongeBob's couch, kind of. Not one-to-one in any regard, but definitely gives me familiar vibes for sure, with Gary sitting there, the TV, everything. So that's the Intertidal Zone cover right there. And fun fact, we also got a spin-off series called the Intertidal Zone that includes the brand new spin-off show, The Patrick Star Show, and also Camp Coral, that was called The Tidal Zone, a reference to the Twilight Zone, and also a better reference to the original inception of all of this, the Intertidal Zone. And that came out in 2023, which which is insane to see them still calling back to that, and I love it so much. Despite the fan base's opinion, they really do respect Steven Hillenburg, and they do a lot of different nods to some of his work in modern episodes if you really pay attention, and I love it, and we'll talk about some of those as well. But anyway, so we did get to see that early version of Gary, but of course you're wondering, what about SpongeBob, the main man himself? We do see, I guess, kind of like an early form of Patrick with the eyes on the end of his legs, but let's just not imagine that it's Patrick, because that kind of creeps me out. But here is SpongeBob himself. It is this cool sponge with the sunglasses, and he's kind of like the announcer of this Intertitle Zone comic book. Rocky the Shrimp is kind of the host. As you can see here, this sponge, his name is Bob the Sponge, actually announces, the host is Rocky the Shrimp, but kind of the announcer of the Intertitle Zone comic series seemed to be Bob the Sponge here. And that was the first ever sponge-like character that we saw Steven ever create. And looking at him, I mean, that is a cool sponge. He kind of looks like one of Stimpy's boogers, but at the same time, that was our first SpongeBob. And of course, he had no clue at this time that he was creating a whole series around it, and it was made to look more like an actual, well, sea sponge. So that's why he looks the way that he does. But like I said, we're going to talk about something that happened even earlier than that, is the theme song, the iconic theme songs for SpongeBob SquarePants. We'll play 2 seconds before it gets copyrighted.
Are you ready, kids?
I mean, you know the rest, come on. But that theme song actually got its inception while he was at the Marine Institute as well. While at the facility, he also had a job working on a small ship as a sailor. The ship was called the Pilgrim. And essentially, he would dress like a seaman, one from like the 1800s, and he would sing songs about the ocean to help kids learn a little bit. And they were called sea shanties, to be kind of themed after old sea songs that they would sing during these times on the boats. And when he would do these songs, he would always start them off with, "Are you ready, kids?" and "I can't hear you." And that is literally where he got the original SpongeBob theme song starting point. It's so distinguishable among all the other shows on. It had to have been at least a part of its success. Okay, so now we've talked about, you know, how SpongeBob, the theme song, the sponge got, you know, invented essentially. But we're taking a 3-year gap now because Steven Hillenburg realized how much he was into art, and really he had wanted to become a marine biologist just to find something to pay the bills that he also enjoyed, but he really wanted to do something with art. So after 3 years of being at the Marine Institute, he decided he wanted to go back to school in order to learn about animation and how to make art his living. So he went to Cal Arts, which is where many great animators from so many iconic shows have come from, to practice art and develop the craft. And after he got out of school and he graduated, he got some of his films actually played at different film festivals, like the Ottawa Animation Festival. He had many short films at this time, but we'll play a clip of one of them right here, which is called Wormholes. And honestly, if you look at this short, to me, the aesthetic looks just like Nickelodeon at the time. The style fits in with Nickelodeon so well before he had even had a full-blown career at this point. The short's about 7 minutes, and if you get into it around like 3 minutes, there's a character that appears looking out of a window. And we'll pause it for a second, and that very well may be, I could be stretching here, that very well could be the first ever version of Squidward. This is before he even knew SpongeBob would ever be a thing, maybe. But this character looking out the window looks similar to me. I mean, you guys, he's got the big head on the top, the long nose. You guys let me know. Am I making a mile-long stretch to make this happen on that connection? But like I said, stylistically, like if you look at the show, it looks like Nickelodeon already. But at one of these film festivals, Joe Murray, on screen here, was gearing up and getting a crew ready for Rocko's Modern Life. And it is unbelievable. It's quite literally like a destiny connection, because he didn't know about Rocko yet because it hadn't been created, and Steven Hillenburg made this short, and it already like aesthetically fits so well. They were like destined to connect for things to just continue onward. So Steven Hillenburg meets Joe Murray. He ends up getting him a job at Nickelodeon working on Rocko's Modern Life as a writer and a storyboard artist. So he works on the show for a few years, and never at any point did he think about being a showrunner, creating his own show. But at some point, Joe Murray, towards the last season of Rocko's Modern Life, Joe Murray decided to leave the Rocko Modern Life series and Nickelodeon. And Nickelodeon promotes Steven Hillenburg to the director of Rocko's Modern Life. And like I said, he had no plans of creating his own show still. But then he went on to direct an episode that changed everything, and that is Fish and Chumps. An episode of Rocko's Modern Life that is just like unbelievable. If you're a SpongeBob fan and you watch that episode, you can see the inception develop as it becomes SpongeBob SquarePants. And did you notice anything a little odd here, a little bit referential, a little weird, a little like what are the odds type of thing? There's a pineapple on his shoulder. There's literally a pineapple on his shoulder. Of any fruit, of all the fruits in the world that could be on his shoulder, it's a pineapple. Coincidence? I think not. There is no way. At this point, Steven Hillenburg had no clue he was going to make SpongeBob. From all sources that we have available, there is no clue that he had that he was going to create SpongeBob. Why would you even have to put a fruit on a sailor's shoulder? I think he knew something that we didn't. I don't know what it was. If he knew he was going to make the show, or if it was just some subconscious decision by destiny itself, but of all the fruits he picked to put on this sailor's shoulder, it's a pineapple. Very, very interesting, and like an early hint at what we would have down the line from the character who lives in a pineapple under the sea. So you can see some of the early humor there, you can see so much, and that's kind of the inception of when he decided he wanted to create his own show. So after he decides he wants to make his own show, he can't really put a finger on exactly what he wants to do, but he knows he wants to involve marine biology and also his love for animation. While talking to Martin Olson, another member of the Sponge team, he has a copy of his Inner Title Zone book on his desk. I only am assuming as a piece of hopefully inspiration as he's looking at his other work, kind of coming up with his show idea. And Martin Olson grabs it, looks at him, and tells him, "Are you kidding me? Here's your show right here." And from there, the rest is pretty much history. So originally the show was called SpongeBoy Ahoy. You can see right here the original logo and Bible image that he was using to kind of start the show. And I've heard two different stories onto how the name was changed. So even though the show was called SpongeBoy Ahoy, the character's name was still supposed to be SpongeBob SquarePants. And I've heard two different stories as to how that name got made. So here in the SpongeBob Experience book, it says, "I had SpongeBob in the back of my head, but he needed a last name. I thought SquarePants was the most ridiculous name he could have. He's a square, right? It made me laugh, thinking of all the parents who would be absolutely baffled by their kids saying SpongeBob SquarePants." But I've also heard in other interviews Tom Kenny say that he didn't have a last name at this point, and that he saw the SpongeBob character when trying to come up with a voice, and he said like, "Who's this weird SquarePants dude? He's got square pants, right?" And that's when Hillenburg got that and decided, okay, well that's what I want to do with the last name and make it SpongeBob SquarePants. So I mean, I'm sure that there's just some kind of confusion there. And I don't know where that confusion came from. I'm not sure if maybe the writers of this book got it mixed up, or if there's just probably more to the story of as to how he got the last name SquarePants. I believe both perspectives. I think that probably sometimes in media, just to make things sound smoother and to be more palatable for an audience, sometimes they slightly bend things, you know, in order to make it sound a little better. But the point of me bringing it up is just that there's two different directions as to how he got the last name SquarePants, and because of that, I don't really know 100% sure which one is it, but pick whichever one you like better, or combine the two, I don't know. But anyway, he decides he wants to make the show about creatures in a tide pool, just like the Inner Title Zone comic, under an island called Bikini Atoll. That is not some kind of conspiracy theory or a creepypasta, it's just the truth. And that's why it's called Bikini Bottom, is because it's below Bikini Atoll, so therefore Bikini Bottom. So Hillenburg started working with creators like Derek Draymond, Nick Jennings, and of course Plankton himself, Mr. Lawrence, on developing this world, and kind of gave them the vibe that he was looking for, as like a Tiki Island Hawaiian party style vibe. So first off here, if you take a look, we can start from the bottom here. So you have the Bikini Bottom sign. That kind of stayed the same. That's still today on screen. The Bikini Bottom sign that we see at the intro of many episodes, or them entering the town.
Here we see Bikini Bottom, teeming with life.
There you've got SpongeBob, Squidward, and also Patrick's house. And you can see Squidward's house has a very, very more apparent frowning face. It's become a more relevant knowledge now that Squidward's Tiki Island house kind of has a very don't bother me kind of look. But in this one, it's even more apparent. You can see a very obvious frown on Squidward's house. SpongeBob's house looks very similar, and Patrick's house looks very similar. On the far right here, you can see we have Muscle Beach. That pretty much stayed the same. A big building here that kind of looks like the top of a boat, like maybe the boat's underneath there and it's kind of buried there. And that kind of, I mean, it looks maybe like an early version of Shady Shoals, but I really don't know what that building possibly was transformed into. And over here on the left, you'll see we have the Krusty Krab there. And of course, you can see the Krusty Krab actually kind of looks like an old school crab trap. And there's a house that's directly behind the Krusty Krab, and it's actually labeled that that's where Mr. Krabs and Pearl would live. Whereas, of course, now we know that they live in this this beautifully painted anchor here. And then next to that, of course, we have across the street, that has always been the case, we have the Chum Bucket. And the Chum Bucket, I'd say, of like all the things here, is one of the things that kind of got changed the most. You can see the Chum Bucket does have his iconic telescope viewpoint that's coming out of the top that Plankton uses to look at the Krusty Krab constantly.
Hey buddy, you wanna eat at the Chum Bucket?
But it is still called the Chum Bucket, and it does have the actual handle there still too though. But of course now we know it has the giant fist on top of the Chum Bucket holding the handle. And I don't quite know where that reference for the fist came along, but if you look at the actual fist on the Chum Bucket, the line patterning on the fist, it kind of is just kind of to represent a fish holding, well, a bucket. And then you've got Sandy's house right here, Tree Under Glass. And Sandy was actually a character that was introduced into the series due to Nickelodeon actually pushing back at Hillenburg, saying that they wanted a girl character. And again, all of this information is coming from the books that I have, the online research, and documentaries that were released. The only truth that there really is the people that actually worked on this. But from what's out there, it seems that that's how Sandy was developed, was Hillenburg being pushed to add a girl character. So he added Sandy, and I think he added the best character ever and gave it such a unique and fun twist as well. So we have her tree dome right there. And then you've got a couple other Bikini Bottom houses and stuff like that, which I've heard from other people that they're designed to kind of look like mufflers off of cars. And that could be the case. There's no real direct information as to whether that's true or not. But you also see an anchor in the background, which I think that anchor then became Mr. Krabs' house. And I think the anchor may be the most genius thing about this entire map. Like, the map is beautiful. You can see the flower arc in the background there, which could be like a gear possibly of some kind from a ship maybe. And that's still in Bikini Bottom today. Even if you play the video games, you'll be able to walk past that arc. But that anchor is such a brilliant idea because it brings the entire map into perspective. So that anchor being there gives you the perspective of really just how big Bikini Bottom is. And it's not that big at all. Like, it's probably like 20 by 20 feet wide. Like, it's not that big of an area. Like, you could probably fit Bikini Bottom in the room that I'm in right now. But I love that anchor because, like I said, it just brings the whole thing into perspective. So right after that, we get the character designs. So let's start with Mr. Krabs here. So here's an early shot of Mr. Krabs. We have two images that are gonna be on screen for you right here. You can see his outfit is the same, but because of the colored version we have, you get to see some differences in there. So it seems like he had originally a yellow shirt, and of course Mr. Krabs was red, but if you notice, his nose is actually blue. I don't know what changed or why they went with the blue and then decided not to. There's a couple different like odd colors that you'll notice in certain characters that were completely changed, but Mr. Krabs had a blue nose originally. But keeping it in the Krabs family, if you will, we have Pearl. And you can see Pearl's design is, again, very similar as well, too. And I feel like she has a very big tail in that opening shot there. And I guess maybe for animation purposes, or maybe it getting in the way of certain shots. I could even see it being down to when the show was first released, them having to work on a smaller frame as the televisions were a 4:3 like type of ratio rather than widescreen. That maybe it just took up too much space, so they got rid of the tail. But you can see she has a tail in that original shot, and she also has double pigtails, which of course now is just a single ponytail. But looking at her colored version there, you can see she always kind of had those white go-go boots, the pink skirt, but a yellow outfit there, but always kind of had a cheerleading style there. Okay, so then working our way down on the colored image, so we're gonna be skipping our main guys here at first. We actually have Sandy cheeks. So in the early shots of Sandy here, you can see her outfit again is very similar, very space explorer-esque. In the color image, you'll see she's actually surfing in the water, kind of like in a goo lagoon, but just literally surfing through the water. And you can see rather than her just kind of having like a set amount of oxygen within her suit, she actually has an oxygen tank in the back of her suit, kind of pumping the air in, which I think just makes sense. Like, it makes total sense that a suit like that would need some kind of like oxygen system, but we all just kind of imagine it as like, oh, okay, there's this set amount of air within the bubble that she can just live off of, which obviously, you know, would probably lead to some serious crazy tendencies with the carbon dioxide poisoning she would experience. So that makes total sense. But I mean, other than that, I mean, her design is similar. Of course, stylistically, it looks a lot different, but that's pretty much it from Sandy. And then next up we have Squidward here, and he doesn't really make much of a change. He still has the 4 tentacles that he has on the bottom and the 2 on top, making him a very odd octopus. But I can see a little bit more separation between his tentacles on the bottom, whereas in the modern release version of SpongeBob, the bottom 4 tentacles kind of combine into 2 to kind of just represent legs. His face is a little bit flatter, but other than that, Squidward kind of has the same look. And then for Patrick, I feel like maybe him and SpongeBob are the most unchanged. We have Patrick on screen here. Patrick looks even more dumb somehow. But if you see in the colored version here, he actually has purple and yellow pants on rather than his green and purple, which I think the green and purple actually fits the aesthetic of the entire show so well. And the color schemes of all the characters I've talked about before complement each other so well too. And I think that's really like once it became a Nickelodeon product and working with all these industry masterminds, they've really figured out a way to create a cohesive look that just works so well. And as I've said, like, you know, the designs, if you really look at them on the foundational level, all of their designs kind of complement one another. And I think that's why you see color changes in like Mr. Krabs' shirt, Patrick's pants, and later you'll see some changes even in SpongeBob. And with SpongeBob, again, very similar, probably the most unchanged character. I mean, he's got the same goofy look, just a little bit more refined. Like I said, once you start being a corporate design, it's a little bit more refined, and Steven's style is definitely more comic book-esque and was more refined to a more modern Nickelodeon-styled show once getting into the production. But you can see he has the same basic looks with the blue eyes, the rosy cheeks. The Krusty Krab hat actually, weirdly enough, has a C on it, saying that kind of maybe the early version of the Krusty Krab was just crab with a C rather than a K. And he seems to be wearing it in all cases. Like, you can see him wearing it in this boatmobile in the colored version, and you can see it in the black and white photo, almost as if he never takes it off. Here's another early picture. So, I think that at that time, that was probably to kind of make SpongeBob so obsessed with his job that, like, when he got that Krusty Krab hat and he became a worker, it was essentially fused, almost like became a part of his body, so he never took it off. But I couldn't tell you as to why they ultimately ended up deciding with him taking the hat off in other circumstances. And also in the colored image, you can see SpongeBob driving a boatmobile, showing that maybe at an earlier point in time, SpongeBob would have maybe been able to drive a boatmobile. But I think it's far funnier that he just never gets it. And finally here we've got Plankton. You can see in the black and white design, Plankton just looks like a literal dot, just kind of shouting, you know? And then in the colored version, you can see him kind of being a little bit of a tech mastermind, having this like underwater submarine jet car. And with SpongeBob's car and also with Plankton's, you can see they have these bubbles around them, which, you know, is a design choice that makes some sense because it's like, you know, it would be like a safety area, but since they're underwater anyway, it's like there's really no point in the bubble being there. So I'm sure that's why they got rid of that. But with Plankton's submarine car here, you can see that it kind of ended up being the Bikini Bottom bus. So they used that design still, but in no way does it involve Plankton or has anything to do with Plankton. But it's good to see that that design was kept for something else, being that bus. And Plankton doesn't have so little detail that it's hard to really even say what he would have looked like. He's just very small and he's green. So that pretty much covers the characters. We'll talk about some other really small things here in a second outside of that, but let's talk about a character that you see before any of them. In the first episode, you see Painty the Pirate. So let's talk about Painty the Pirate and where he came from. So I already told you how the song got created with Steven being a sailor at the Marine Institute and creating the starting of that song. But the actual painting for Painty the Pirate, Steven Hillenburg, he seemed to be an out there savvy shopper and hunter just like us. He would frequently go to swap meets, flea markets, and stuff like that, looking for nautical memorabilia and stuff that he liked to add to his collection. And he found a painting of a sailor that looked very similar to the Painty the Pirate that we see, and they brought that back. He had it repainted to look more like a pirate, and he cut the mouth hole out. And in the opening intro, of course, many of you may know this part, his mouth is what you can see singing the SpongeBob SquarePants theme song. But the background of the painting is that painting's a real painting. Like, that painting exists somewhere. I don't know if it's a Nickelodeon studio. It's not something that's like was digitally made just to be a representation. It's an actual photo, a still live action shot of a real painting. So just let that set in. That painting exists somewhere. And honestly, if that thing doesn't end up in the Smithsonian in like 20 years, I'm gonna be mad. I mean, as long as it's safe in like Nickelodeon's archive or something, or again with Steven Hillenburg's family, I would be okay. But hope the thing never goes to the wayside. I would love it to be at a museum somewhere we could all go visit it and just take a look and just like, wow, this was like this single painting. Like, how iconic could a painting really be? You know what I mean? Like, you think about Mona Lisa, like it's a beautiful painting, you know, and it's just very impactful. But it's more iconic for just being the artwork and how much praise we gave it than anything else. Whereas this painting is like influential on the scale of people's life, people's childhood, and not just that, it's a TV icon. And I mean, I can't really say there's probably that many paintings or pieces of art that are like that. And I don't know who painted that original artwork. I'm gonna have to look into that a little further, but dare I say that that could be like a modern Mona Lisa. So if that painting's real, to put it somewhere we could all go visit it, I would pay good money to go see this painting. So that's the story of Painty the Pirate. So some other early shots here, we have SpongeBob doing some bubble art here. His bubble skills were, again, from the beginning. Yeah, it became a whole episode in the bubble stand episode. You can see some of those early designs, including a giraffe here. And you also have an early design of Muscle Beach, and you can see you have a shark there lifting some anchor weights. SpongeBob intimidatedly looking at the anchor weights, presumably being smaller anchors, like I said, compared with the big anchor that's outside. You have a sperm whale in the back there, which is the earliest sperm whale up until way later. We saw a prisoner that was a sperm whale, and even more recently another sperm whale, but that's the original sperm whale before. That could be Pearl's real dad right there, you know? But more interestingly, on the right, you can see we have Larry down there, the earliest form of Larry. He's always been a big rock of a dude walking around. He's got like a little unibrow going on there, but that would be your early version of Larry there. Okay, and then taking a look at that, I mean, you can see the characters have changed quite a bit, but that's never stopped from the beginning. I mean, even today, the characters are still changing. There was a huge transformation from their core beginnings all the way to their first appearance on TV. But looking at some of the characters now versus that first season, you'll see significant differences. So it's so interesting to see all of these characters evolve, and I feel so blessed, and I've had such an amazing time living through it and being able to witness those changes along the way. And right now on screen, we'll have some visual representations of what things looked like before season 1 comparatively to season 13, or even 3D in Sponge on the Run. It's just really cool to see that develop, and you know, you can see that happen with many other characters like Bart Simpson originally versus today. As time goes on, those characters and the worlds have to transform in order to fit into the mold and stay relevant in the modern times. And I think it'll be more interesting to see another 20 years, 25 years very soon here down the road what these characters look like, and I hope I'm here to cover it. But this video was a blast for me. As with the starting of this channel, this whole channel was started purely on passion and something that I wanted to do. And every video that you see us release here, it's something that I just genuinely want to do, and I have so much fun doing it. I feel so lucky to have the opportunity to be able to do it and hang out with so many beautiful, amazing people like you and call you guys my friends and family in this community. This video was definitely a representation of that to the fullest. I don't know if this video is even gonna do that well, but for me, I knew there would be a blast for me and Ryan editing this video as well too, to be able to look at like kind of the core of all this stuff. And I read this book off camera, I read this book off camera, I've read freaking countless articles off camera for a long time, and watching those documentaries, it was just like I wanted to be kind of bring all that information together just to kind of see how far SpongeBob has come in the last 25 years. We are now going into SpongeBob's 25th anniversary, so I thought it would be kind of cool, as I consider myself a small little fixture of this community, to be able to kind of set us up in a way to look into this 25th anniversary and like see how far that SpongeBob has already come. So I hope that I did some part of that, and hopefully you guys learned some stuff. And for those of you guys that are SpongeBob, you know, novice, just getting into this, maybe you learned a lot. And for those of you guys that are SpongeBob experts, people that have been watching this channel for years, you may have known a lot of the stuff, but hopefully you learned at least a couple things new, or if anything, got a refresher again on just how far all this has gone. And I can't wait for the 25th anniversary. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, smack the like button, subscribe if you're new here so you guys do not miss any of the videos we do here. We do a lot of hunting videos, going out looking for collectibles to add to this collection. We also do a lot of unboxings, we do fan mail videos, but every now and then I like to sit right down here and talk to you guys really passionately about something I'm interested in. So if any of that interests you, subscribe. If you want to support the show further, we have a Patreon where you can sign up for only $2 a month, and you'll be getting extended versions of every video that I release, including this one, as well as Patreon only videos. And you can be invited to our Discord where you can hang out and talk to a bunch of other people in this community that love the very same stuff. So that link will be down below. If you want to see me live, you can visit me on Whatnot. That link will be down below too, where you can sign up and check out the auctions I do every single Friday, where we auction off a lot of the stuff that we love here on this show, whether it be doubles or stuff that I get in that goes right back into this show we do over here on YouTube. But not just me, you can pick up stuff from other people as well, from the open marketplace. It's there 24/7, or live shows. It's almost like if eBay and Twitch had a baby, that would be Whatnot. So if you love collecting, whether it be, like I said, Funko Pops, Pokemon cards, SpongeBob, nostalgia merch, video games, you name it, they have it over there. And you never want to limit yourself to one marketplace, because there's so many deals to be had out there if you look around. And Whatnot has some amazing deals there, so go take a look. And when you sign up, you get $15 for free, absolutely free. And a little secret between me and you don't even really have to like buy something more than that. You could just use the free $15 and get something for free. So that's also one option as well too. But if you want to get something bigger, you get $15 off. That link will be down below. I'll see you guys in this video right here that I know you're gonna love. And it's always Rep Pack. I will see you beautiful people in the next video. Adios and bloop.